Just kidding. Yeah. Get me fired up.
Smack me. Come on, I'm almost ready.
Welcome to the Go HQ podcast. I am Amy Bailey. This is Brandon Rahe. Today we are talking about being mentally tough and what that means, what it means to Brandon and I as coaches, the good parts, the bad parts, and some take-home messages to maybe improve upon being more mentally tough. So Brandon, why don't you start maybe kind of defining what does being mentally tough even mean?
I would be happy to define that. This is a topic I'm extremely passionate about, and I feel like I spend the majority of my day dealing with this, really, even though what we do is physical. So
Yeah.
For today's terms, we are going to define mental toughness as lacking the mind power to continue even though you are physically able to. Physically capable of going, just the limiting factors up here.
Your head gets in the way of your body,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. And one of my quotes that I use at least once a day, if not 58 times a day, is that if we put my head into your body, we would get this done. I say that all the time when people are hesitating on a task or before they do a lift or a box jump or whatever it is, and they're just breaking down here. I don't struggle with that very much.
Yeah.
And I would love to project that onto their skills and abilities. So,
Agreed.
That being said, what are in your daily routine here coaching clients, what's maybe a negative, like a con to not having mental toughness, right? So when you're dealing with what you would consider to be a mentally weak client, how does that hold you back? How does it hold them back? Maybe an example, anything come to mind?
Yeah, so just in kind of everyday general coaching, when I'm giving you a workout or a move and you tell me, no, I can't do that, I have to spend more time as your coach coaching you into starting than just moving through the workout. Like, then at the end, I feel like you didn't get a great enough workout because we spent half the time talking and talking you through. You can go lower in your squat. You physically are able, and just kind of getting to the root of why you think you can't, and then getting into the movement. So it's like we spend so much time talking and getting kind of in the psychology of it without actually doing the workout. And not that that's always a bad thing, but if it's every single time we have a session or we meet or we're in class, it just, it gets kind of, you get bogged down in talking instead of working out every single time. So
Yeah. I agree with all of that. We sometimes will have people that we feel like as coaches and trainers, our hands are totally tied. We're here to train you physically, of course, but what comes with that? Mental toughness, emotional toughness.
Yeah.
It dips into other areas of your life and how you apply all of these skills to your normal outside world behaviors. So if you come in for a session with a coach or you go into a class and everything is problematic, you don't feel like you can do anything without the willingness to try, like, in a way, what are you there for? I mean, you're there for help, and on a long enough timeline, will it help? Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've got to make some progress, but it will hold you back, and it will hold your coach back from their roles, because one of our roles is accountability. Another one of our roles is to push you, a little bit of intensity, right? But if we can't do anything with intensity, and we're working so hard to get you just to attempt some of the basic tasks, we're not getting into the good stuff. We're still not leaving your comfort zone, and that's going to hold everyone back.
And I mean, I feel like it's frustrating on both the coach and the athlete's end, because, if your goal is, say, lose 10 pounds in 2 months, let's say, but your intensity isn't there because you're unwilling to push yourself, it's hard for us to help push you towards your goal so that you can achieve things and feel good about what you've achieved. So it's just kind of a downward spiral. If you come in the door not willing to push yourself a little bit and then gradually maybe toughen up and push yourself harder and harder, it just makes the whole process that much harder, I feel like. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, your likelihood of reaching your goals in a respectable time frame go down the tubes. and then you get frustrated, right? Because you're not getting the results that you came in for.
Right.
And then you start maybe doing the blame game. Maybe it's the trainer's fault. Maybe it's bad genetics. Maybe it's all of these things
Right.
that really have nothing to do with it. You need to toughen up, put in the work, and be willing to get uncomfortable. And we see that as a limiting factor all the time. And I don't think that's something that is taught easily.
Right.
I think some people naturally have that. They were brought up with mental toughness kind of primers. Maybe their parents raised them very strict, and they weren't coddled very much. And so you're going to see that later in life. So it's hard to teach it, but can you develop it? Absolutely. And we're going to get to some of the tips on how to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, we've been hitting on a lot of the negatives of a lack of mental toughness, but I think on the other side of it, we also encounter a lot of folks that do have mental toughness and have seen the positive effects of what that does with their workouts and with their reaching their goals and things. So do you want to kind of touch on that a little bit too?
So this is where I become passionate, right? These are the people that I love. I relate to them. They make great clients. They make better athletes. They are more productive out in society, I feel.
Yeah.
They are immediately willing to go through whatever it is, pain, discomfort, mental, emotional anguish, and keep moving forward. So I could name a bunch of examples on this, but someone comes in that has legitimate injury history, hip replacement, knee replacement, low back injuries, spinal surgeries, whatever it is. And those are the people that don't complain about legitimate, documented historical injuries. Even though this rap sheet exists,
Yep.
They will still come in and just execute what you have them execute. They trust you as a coach, and so if you're telling them to, do some deadlifts that day, assuming they're trusting you on watching their form and technique, they will just execute the deadlift. They won't have fear. They will just try to execute what you're asking them to do. And it's a thing of beauty. They won't complain about it.
Yeah.
You even have to remind them, hey, if something's not feeling right, speak up, let me know.
Yeah.
But they never have the hesitation, and it is awesome. You never feel like you are held back on these individuals. And some of the cases, examples that I have of this, I mean, there are some of my clients that have crazy, crazy medical histories that would scare a lot of trainers off. Like, you almost wouldn't want to have them move for fear of injury. And they do amazing things in here every day, and I never hear them complain, and it is awesome. And I'm always enlightened by those people, and I hope that if I have that injury rap sheet later in life, that I am still as mentally tough as they are. So, a lot of pros. Sorry, I get worked up.
I was going to say, if there's any incentive to be mentally tough to see Brandon that enthusiastic about you.
Yeah. So, yeah. I struggle with clients that I can't relate to mentally because I'm always trying to pull that out of them. So the tough ones, I'm like, this is great. I can do my job now.
Yes. It is exciting because you're like, okay, they're willing to try new things and push harder. So it's more fun to come up with fun workouts and kind of think outside the box with them. And so therefore that also trickles down to them as well, where they're like, oh, this is fun and different. I didn't know I could do this. I didn't know I could get to the point where I was doing pull-ups with no bands. Well, if I hadn't tried it to begin with, because my shoulder hurts every day, I get equally as fired up, but it is cool. I totally agree with you. Being mentally tough goes a long way, just in like the everyday, well, in the gym and out, but especially when it comes to just, I don't know, going beyond what you even think you can do, even if you are mentally tough.
Sure. Test the limits. Test the boundaries. That's going to get you as an athlete or as a client excited about progress, excited about trying new things, seeing what you're capable of. And of course, that's going to excite us as trainers, as coaches, to see what you are capable of. Like, we want to know, and we want to be there and share your progress with you. We want to be excited with you if you get your first pull-up that you never thought you could do a pull-up, and all of a sudden you're doing 1 or 3 pull-ups. Like, that is super exciting for us to see you go through that and make that progress. But going back to the weakness side, if you're never willing to try and have this excitement and push through a little bit of wrist discomfort or whatever it is that you think is holding you back and you're kind of complaining and whining about, we're not going to be seeing eye to eye, and now this is a mental exercise instead of a kind of physical one, but really we want both. Through the physical intensity, you're going to help develop mental toughness, even for those of you that are mentally tough.
Right. And I think you kind of made a good point. Like, the little bit of uncomfortability in most movements or whatever you're doing, it's so temporary that if you just push through it, usually the accomplishment that comes with it far exceeds, like the good feeling of accomplishing far exceeds that temporary uncomfortableness that comes with whatever you're doing. So
yeah, pain is temporary.
Yeah, and you know, it hurts to run a really fast mile, but then when you're like, man, I've never run a faster mile in my life, I am proud of myself for doing that. Yeah, I'm tired and I'm winded and I just need to lay on the ground, but it's kind of a cool feeling. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes is from Steve Prefontaine, famous miler actually, and 5K specialist, but he said, "Don't let fatigue make a coward of you." And that like strikes true for me. When you get real tired, like you want to quit, you want to slow down, you want to whatever, but
yeah.
It's temporary. It's fatigue. You're not going to die. Your leg isn't falling off. Like you're going to recover and be fine. Can you keep moving? Up here, the rest will happen for you.
Yeah.
So that being said, we've talked about some cons, we've talked about some pros. We want some sort of take-home message here for you guys to maybe think about either A, in your daily life, or B, in the gym. You can apply this, but some tips to develop your mental toughness specifically along with your physical training.
Yeah.
So you want to kick this off, coming in at number 3?
Coming in at number 3, well, I think the first step is just having an open mind. As your coaches, we're not ever going to assign you something that's going to hurt you or going to be something that's harder than you should be able to do. Part of our role is coaching you to make you better. So if you walk in the door and we give you a workout, be open to it. At least try it. You know, maybe it's not the most perfect looking blank, the perfect looking squat, but be open to going lower or to the feedback that we give you. We're not trying to make you feel bad, or we're not mad at you or anything. It's just part of the process of being a better athlete. So I think just being open and willing to try and going from there.
Yeah, you've got to be open-minded. We hear people react because of what they think they know or what they've been led to believe off of myths. You know, like if we say, hey, we're gonna have you do a deadlift, somebody says, oh, my brother blew his back out doing deadlifts, I shouldn't do these are dangerous. You're very closed-minded already.
Yes.
We don't know what the situation was with your brother that blew his back out. Like, was he under a coach's tutelage? Was he doing it right? Was he lifting more than his means? Like, we don't know these things. If you've heard squats are bad for your knees, A, you've heard wrong, and B, again, like all these technical sides of things, like you've got to be open-minded. You're dealing with experienced coaches in this capacity. We're not here to hurt you. We're here to help you. We're not going to put you at risk. So be open-minded. When you see us demonstrate a move, your immediate response shouldn't be, I can't do that.
Right.
Or like, this is ridiculous. Or like, why are we doing this? We hear these responses all day and make jokes about it, but really the root of that is the lack of confidence and the lack of mental toughness.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
So be open. Coming in at number 2, separate physical from the mental. This is a huge one that I think is a root of a big percentage of this topic for us in application in here. When you're going through physical exercise, you're going to have physical feedback. If that's newsflash to you, I don't know what to say. That should not be a newsflash to you. No. So there's so many examples here, I don't even know where to begin. But if you're doing an exercise and you feel physical discomfort, that is normal. You should be feeling muscles engage and tighten. If you lack mobility in your hips, like you may feel weird sensations when you squat or lunge. If we ask you to go lower in a squat or reach higher and your shoulders are a little tight, like, okay, separate the little physical discomfort things versus like pain and injury. If something is tearing or breaking or whatever, gonna burst, hey, we need to know that information.
Right.
But if your wrists are just a little uncomfortable because they're bent back and you're holding a bar on the front, sorry, it will not last. By lunchtime, you will forget that it ever happened.
Right.
So you can't let that stuff hold you back. Any experience on that?
Yeah, no, I just kind of echoing what you said. You know, if you have a legitimate, true injury, okay, my wrist is broken, okay, I will take that into consideration when writing your workout. If it just doesn't feel good because the bar is on your chest and kind of choking you a little bit, again, it's very temporary and it'll be okay. Like, don't just shut down and decide you're not going to go any further in the workout simply because of a 2-second time of discomfort. So
yeah, and an easy example of this that I like to use is stretching, right? We get into some of our stretching routines and you'll commonly hold a stretch for 20 or 30 seconds, which is not very long. And you're a little uncomfortable during that time. You're supposed to be in a position of mild discomfort while you stretch. That's how we,
right,
you know, get the results,
flexible,
right?
Yeah.
So let's say we take that same stretch that you were feeling at the 20-second mark and hold you there for 5 minutes. Are you uncomfortable? Yes, absolutely. You started getting uncomfortable at 20 seconds. Are you being more injured as you go because the discomfort level is rising the longer you hold it? No, you're not at any more likelihood of injury, so there's no risk. It's just upstairs what's going on. You've got to separate what's really happening there. Is it injury, pain, or is it just discomfort?
Right.
So being able to separate that is extremely helpful, which I think leads us to our number 1 tip.
Yeah. Well, and mental toughness, it's not necessarily just a switch. So I feel like the more you practice it, and that means outside the gym as well. And I think a good way to practice it is to kind of come up with a gauge. Like, come up with what's a 10 on your gauge of pain and uncomfortableness, and what's kind of lowest end of the spectrum that you could think of. And in everyday situations, where are you on that gauge? So that you're used to thinking, okay, you know, I was stretching the other day and I was pretty uncomfortable. It's not the most uncomfortable thing I've ever done, so maybe it's like a 4 or 5. Okay, so I can get through this. It is not the most uncomfortable thing I've ever done. But, so that's just an example, but just kind of comparing daily activities in respect to other things of the extreme.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And anytime you have a heightened moment of pain, that is a great moment to come up with the number on a 1 to 10 gauge. 10 being I'm being tortured and I'm about to pass out and or die because the pain is so severe. Maybe childbirth, for those of you mothers out there, maybe that's a 10, right?
It's pretty close.
That's one of the more severe things I can think of.
Yeah.
So if you're rating that as a 10 and 1 being I'm taking a nap on the couch and I'm pretty darn comfortable, like, and you know, so if you stub your toe all of a sudden,
right,
don't freak out. How bad is that compared to childbirth? All of a sudden stubbing your toe is maybe not that bad. Does it hurt? Sure. Then of course when you're in the gym and you're dealing with like wrist discomfort or whatever on an exercise, now you're relating it to stubbing your toe. Like, hey, how bad are you really hurting right now? Like, is it gonna hold you back from the task at hand?
Yeah. Yep.
You know, and if it's so high on the pain gauge that you literally cannot continue, that probably means you're injured.
Right.
I don't think discomfort should ever rank very high on the pain gauge, or if it does, for me, that's a clear sign of mental weakness for you as an athlete, and we need to shift your gauge along the spectrum.
Not a 9.
Right. If everything is above a 5, you're in a lot of trouble, and you need to toughen up a little bit.
You need to hang out with this guy a little more.
Or not.
Oh yeah, that might go in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So, 3 main tips as far as the take-home message. 3, be willing, be open-minded to try things without preconceived notions and ideas that you can't handle it and it's not going to work or it's going to hurt you.
Yeah.
Number 2.
What was number 2? Oh, separating our physical and our mental toughness. Does it hurt? Is it true pain or is it just uncomfortable?
Right, right. And then number 1 is developing that gauge. Have a reference for pain. What has ever been your number 10, your number 5, your number 7, like, and where does any one task lie on that? And if any one moment you're about to debate whether you should continue or not, have a number in mind. Hey, where am I at on the pain gauge? Can I continue? So those 3 tips, I think, applying in your daily life as references will absolutely trickle over to your athletic performance, and your athletic situations will absolutely carry over to your daily life, such as when you were getting ready for Little Hudson, you were prepping yourself for, you had a kind of a pain gauge going, right? Like, hey, labor's gonna be worse than this.
Yeah, like, I mean, being very, very pregnant is uncomfortable in general, and you have aches and pains that are associated with that. So in my everyday life, when I would, like, my sciatica would hurt me, but I'm like, you know, I can get through this. It's temporary. It's not going to go on forever. And compared to what I'm going to go through in labor, I can handle this. Like, I'm going to be good. And it also kind of puts a positive upswing on it. So you're like, okay, things aren't that bad. I got this. Yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable, but I'm going to go on with my day and my life and not have a mental breakdown and not shut down. It's okay. So just kind of keeping things in perspective, I feel like, is what that gauge does for us.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Awesome. Well, that is it for the Mental Toughness podcast. Amy, thanks for having me with you today.
Thank you, Brandon.
And we'll see you next time.